So hi, I'm Steve Rowe, also known as P6 Steve, and I just wanted to have a quick run through here of a new Raku module that I've released. The module is available at Raku LAN, for example, and it's called, if you search on WordPress, you'll find it under CLI Wordpress. And it's basically a way to quickly and easily install WordPress and then use the WordPress CLI command to do CLI stuff on WordPress. Sounds simple stuff, right? So I've got a CLI here, command line. Before I get into the details of CLI WordPress, I want to talk about another CLI module I released a couple of months ago, which is called CLI AWS EC2 simple. Okay, so I've got a command already loaded. So I'm basically on my client machine right now. If I hit RAWs, which is the command that EC2 simple loads for you, then it has some simple options here. And what I've also got on my system is, you'll see on the right hand side of the screen is an editor that shows a simple YAML file that tells RAWs EC2, sits in my home directory and tells RAWs EC2 the parameters that it's going to use. So here I'm going to, so I can go RAWs EC2 list, and that will tell me what I've got listed, what instances I've got on Amazon EC2. You can see I've got one instance which I just terminated, so I can show you a fresh one coming in. Here's how it looks in my Amazon EC2 console, so it's a terminated instance. Okay, cool. So I want to create a new one, and I do that with RAWs EC2 launch. I've got a couple of command line options in here where I want to put in. One is NSU. So what I basically see, you can see over here, I've chosen an image that I already created earlier, which has the RAWs EC2 setup already done on it. So otherwise that takes a few minutes, and I don't want to bore you too long. And also I'm going to put in EIP. So this is for Elastic IP because I want to reuse the IP. Okay, I'm going to start that off. And you'll see that will just tattle through on the left and tell me how it's getting on. The other things you can put in the YAML file for the new instance that we're creating over on Amazon AWS is you can have specific controls around security group permissions and so on. It's the amount of storage. So it's a very simple way to set up a machine. So let's see how we're doing here on the left. Fine, I think got one running now. Okay, and then if I want to connect over to that instance, this connect command just will bring back an SSH string. It checks the machine's running and brings back an SSH string. So let's do that, connect to it. So now I'm connected to my new instance. And if you don't believe me, I can just go over and refresh on the console. Here it is, and it's picked up the public IP address from Elastic IP. Great. Okay, so what next? Well, the next thing I want to do is let's just remind ourselves we're looking here at Raku CLI Wordpress. So as you can see from the main GitHub information, the README, it's going to tell us we need to go in and zef install Raku CLI WordPress.git. I'm using the Git form at the moment just because that's changing a little bit, but when it's stabilized, you can just go zef install CLI WordPress. So that's coming in now on our new, because we're SSH'd in over here to our new machine. Actually, what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to create a new Windows RAWs. Got the connection string. Let's just pick that up again. This is basically a standard Ubuntu instance on AWS. What it has is Raku and Zef and Docker and Docker Compose. Okay, cool. And that's typically we have to sudo those commands because that's the way that Ubuntu comes for you. So here I've got another window into the same system. Okay, cool. So let's just ls in this directory. So you'll see I've got Zef in here now. For ls al, that will give me the hidden files I've got. So you'll see now I've actually got a new configuration folder. It's a dot. So we could cd.rawp, that's Raku WordPress config. You can see in here I've got a WordPress launch.yaml. So this is the way that I control what you need in your WordPress. So the first thing you have to do is put in a domain name. That's cool. And I'm going to put in p6steve@funnel.net as my admin email for the purposes of getting the SSL certificate. It's fine. So I've done that. So now how do I install and launch WordPress? So I go back to my getting started. It says here, edit my WordPress launch.yaml. I just did that. And then I'm going to go rawp setup, which is a step you have to do first. So basically what setup does is, if I now look in my home directory, is it makes a new folder called WordPress, a new directory called WordPress. And then if I cd into that, you'll see I've got a bunch of new files in here. Basically, this is my docker compose.yaml, which I'm using Docker Compose on the target machine to run, and also the various configurations for Nginx that is set up from the configuration YAML on the machine. There's a couple of scripts in here, so I can go and set up renewals for my SSL certificate as well. Okay, and then what was the next one? So just to remind ourselves what rawp does. So it's basically setup, launch, renewal, up, down, and so on. Some simple commands. So if I go rawp launch now, I've preset the how you set up to set up the actual files. Now I can read them in and apply the launch. All right, so what's going on here is I've created a docker compose.yaml. So I'll have you can have a look at that. So I've got 3 services in here: database, excuse me, I think there's 4, WordPress, my web server, which is Nginx at the front end, fronting the WordPress instance itself. I've actually got a thing called certbot, which comes from Let's Encrypt, which is a very helpful way to set up SSL certificates, and I've got WP CLI, which is my command line thing. Okay, so now you'll see on the left pane here that all of that is running. I've actually tested, and well, 4 out of my 5 services are running. A little bit of a problem with WP CLI, but you'll see that works reasonably well. And now I'm running actually. So I've actually created a non-SML, non-secure HTTP at my domain name. Then I've shut that down, gone to get the certificate, because certbot can then look at the, that I own the domain, validate that, and then I'm creating the certificate for the site. It's all being done automatically for you. So how does what is all that stuff that's being done? So if you want to see what's going on under the cover, you come into the CLI WordPress GitHub, and you can see there's a lot of detail of what's in the Nginx configs. There's a non-secure one for the first pass, then there's a secure one. Then here's that Docker YAML that's basically copied over during the WordPress install and so on. So you don't have to worry about any of this. And now, hopefully, if I go back to what was that? It's RAW's EC2 IP. I think that gets me the IP address. Yep. That's going to tell me where to put my browser. And then I'm going to go over to a new browser window and just put in the IP. Nah, actually, I had a domain name. What am I doing? Obviously, I have a pre-configured prerequisite is to have your domain name point at your elastic IP address, and then I can come in here and set up a new user, which is my admin user, and what else do I need to do? I should just do, oh, hang on. Yeah, better update the password. Otherwise I won't be able to log in. Hopefully that's picked up in my browser. And putting I'm in the WordPress config, so I can now set up my WordPress. Cool. Okay, so what else is does it say over here? I've got, if I look under my, remember I'm on the server machine now, so with RAWP I can do a PS. So RAWP basically gives it just as a pass-through to the Docker commands. You can see I've actually been able to start up WP CLI now. So let's say I want to do some WP CLI stuff behind the scenes, then I can do that. And there's some advice on what you can do over here, said he. Let's go back to the home README. So here's a couple of examples of what, so this basically RAWP is just passing through to WP CLI to the Docker daemon that I've got running, and we'll do that work in the background. So here's, it's passing -- info. So again, if you look back at the README, so here's a link to the commands that you can just pass through in quote marks. So anything you can do with WP CLI, you can do straight in quote marks at the end of RAWP, and it uses that WP CLI daemon. So what else as an example do we have? We have this one here. So I can do a search and replace. I'm going to do a dry run in the database. I think I did call it test. Don't know if yeah, I got 4 hits in here, so it's not case sensitive.